Chapter 7. She was back in her childhood living room, the place she had so often daydreamed about when real life felt too crushing. The battered recliner crouched in the corner, the crocheted blanket half covering its seat, and an ancient bowl of peanuts, her father's favorite snack, rested on the side table. At first, it was all so inviting that she nearly forgot to be terrified. She inhaled deeply, picking up notes of old book bindings, stale coffee grounds, and the lemon polish her mother used to wipe every surface. It smelled of memory, a comfortable nostalgia she hadn't felt in years. And yet, something hovered at the edges of her awareness, a hush so absolute it made the entire room feel pressurized. She glanced down, startled to find herself wearing the exact Girl Scout vest she had when she was 12, covered in bandages she hadn't seen in a decade. Over her heart, pinned at a careful angle, was a small patch reading Yelena, hand-stitched in red thread. A jolt of sorrow squeezed her chest. Her sister's name would never cease to pain her. What Claire wouldn't give up to go even a single day without that pain resurfacing. A flicker of blue and white static caught her peripheral vision. In the corner, the television was on, though muted. Claire took a step closer, drawn by the flickering lights. It showed an unsettling shot of a hallway. It was the ER corridor at Glenview Memorial, exactly as it had looked the many nights she'd spent there with Autumn. Except something was wrong. The angle of the camera was jittery, like it was shot by a frantic, unsteady hand. The lights overhead flickered so fiercely they left after images and tracers. She made out a wheelchair half tipped on its side, an ivy stand knocked over, her stomach twisted in dread. She heard a faint rustling behind her, turned, but saw only the recliner, crocheted blanket, and half-finished peanuts. Her father's voice hissed somewhere deeper in the house. A shiver ran through her. She recalled how he used to read scripture in a low, rasping monotone after her sister died. He fixated often on the book of Daniel. The living room started shifting before she could dwell on it. The brown carpet began to squelch, like water had soaked it from below. The crocheted blanket sprouted tiny black crows, embroidered lines that wove themselves into the shape of beaks and feathers. Claire's heart hammered. She opened her mouth to call out, either for her father or to demand that the house stop moving. The hush swelled, pressed on her larynx, making speech impossible. In the silent TV screen, the camera panned left to show a door with the unreadable sign she recognized from the old cemetery. Except now it was slapped onto a set of swinging hospital doors. A ragged moan came from beyond those doors, a cry so heartbreakingly familiar it made Claire's knees weaken. Autumn. The TV speakers rattled, flickering the screen in and out of static. She felt panic rise in her throat. She had to get through, had to reach that hallway, but she couldn't move. The living room's wallpaper began peeling in thin strips, and the crocheted blanket unraveled into black threads slithering across the floor like maggots. Colors began shifting and merging, morphing the living room walls into impossibly angled shapes that defied perspective. A corner stretched upward like a twisted steeple, while the floor sank in the center, forming a pit of swirling crow feathers. Claire's ears rang with a distant chorus of whispering voices, as though unseen beings chanted from the edges of reality. In a blink, the recliner, the walls, and the couch disappeared, replaced by a corridor that was part hospital, part church foyer. Medical posters clung to one wall, while stained glass windows ran along the other, their colored shafts of light dancing across the scuffed floor. She forced a breath. The hush pressed on her ears so powerfully it felt like they'd burst. Then she heard it. Her father's voice, reciting scripture in a tone both righteously devout and disturbingly hollow. She crept forward, every sense sharpened, searching for any sign of Autumn. The house was too quiet, its corners thick with shadows. Her father's voice, echoing in her memory, cut through the silence. I saw in visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and an holy one came down from heaven. Daniel 4:13. The words seemed to hang in the air, as if he stood right behind her. She pictured him, Bible open in his shaking hands, reciting with an eerie fervor. I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven. He paused in her mind's eye, then continued, his tone rising with each phrase. The decree of the watchers and the demand of the word of the holy ones. Daniel 4:17. His voice resonated with frantic passion, repeating, This matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and settleth up over it the basest of men. She felt a shiver crawl up her spine. Those ancient lines, the words that once seemed cryptic and distant, now felt sinister and close, as if the watchers themselves were hovering in the dark. She tried to shut out her father's voice and focus on the present. Somewhere in the house, Autumn was waiting, and she needed to find her before it was too late. Claire's blood went cold. She remembered her father at the height of his grief and obsession. Daniel's angels perched over the kingdoms of men, each scripture-laced syllable warped in the air, some words curling into a static hiss. The corridor lights flickered from sterile fluorescence to a kaleidoscope of stained glass. She tried to call out, "Dad, why are you here?" But her voice died in her throat. She heard him cite Jude 1:6, the angels that kept not their first estate, and realized he meant these rebellious watchers were cast out to Rome. She recalled his rants on watchers bridging Christian mysticism with something far darker. She took a stumbling step forward, nearly slipping on the tile as it turned dark and slick, as if coated with a film of living tissue. Her father's monotone recitation rose to a near shout. "Holy ones, watchers, devouring angels." His last phrase cracked like a whip, and the hush devoured the rest of his sentence. Shadows loomed at the corridor's far end, crows with bony, elongated limbs, and horrible, twisted angels half merged with the walls. Claire's stomach churned, and her breathing was strained. She spotted the wheelchair on its side, a black stain pooling beneath it. Claire's mind was filled with her own wordless scream. She forced her legs to move, ignoring how each step squelched with a fleshy give. Her father's recitations grew more feral, spitting out lines about chains of darkness, and they were said over King Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, referencing half a dozen verses at once. She recognized 2 Peter 2:4, referencing angels who sinned, but each word was twisted in a static hiss. The hush bent them into an unholy litany. A battered door appeared on her left. She lunged for it, only to flinch back as swirling burnt umber sigils flared across the wood, the same threshold guardians from Arcana Hermetica. She tried the handle, but it scalded her palm. Her father's voice crescendoed behind her. "If God spared not the angels that sinned." A crow-like figure erupted out of the gloom, wings formed from singed and tattered scripture pages. Claire reeled backwards, choking on her own terror. She remembered him ranting once about how Daniel's watchers might be the very angels cast out in Apocrypha, doomed to Rome. Autumn's pained moan echoed again, heartbreakingly near. Claire tried to run, but the corridor's floor yanked her ankles down. Her father's voice devolved into a guttural roar of half-quoted verse. An impossible swirl of black crows, each embroidered with biblical references, dived from overhead, shrieking in a soundless storm. She pressed her hands over her ears. She had to find Autumn. Then the watchers' silhouettes rushed in from every side, overshadowing the door, overshadowing everything. Her father's recitation sputtered into static. "Watchers, holy ones, fallen, cast them, chains." Claire's vision flashed white, the hush roaring so loud she thought her skull would shatter. A final silent scream tore through her, and then the corridor vanished beneath her feet. She jolted awake with a choked gasp, the quiet of the real world pressing on her ears. Dawn's weak light seeped through the bedroom window. Then a ragged moan snapped her fully awake. It was Autumn. Instinct overcame dream lag. Claire shoved off the covers, scrambled, and raced to Autumn's room to shake her awake from one of her far too common PTSD nightmares. She sprinted out of the bedroom, nearly colliding with the door frame, her socked feet slipping on the hardwood. The deafening silence, the hush. It wasn't just a dream anymore. All Claire could hear was the loud thumping of her own heartbeat. She flung open Autumn's door, breath ragged, and found her friend twisted in the sheets, arms flailing at unseen horrors, tears carving wet lines down her cheeks. Autumn's face contorted in silent terror, mouth open in a broken moan. Don Roberto perched atop the dresser, tail puffed like a bottle brush, eyes huge with alarm. Wasting no time, she rushed in, climbed onto the bed, grabbed her friend's shoulders. "Autumn," she hissed, voice trembling. Wake up, it's me. Wake up." Autumn's wails turned guttural, arms thrashing. One palm clipped Claire's forearm, nails scratching in pure panic. Claire tried again, calming herself. "It's just a nightmare, snap out of it." For a moment, she feared Autumn was having a seizure, but then Autumn's eyes blinked wide open, her breath coming in wild sobs. Recognition seeped in by degrees. Finally, Autumn let out an exhalation, tears glistening. She used her body as support, arms wrapping around her friend, murmuring, "You're safe. You're safe. I've got you." The robotic voice of the speech assistant croaked, "Sorry." Her heart twisted. "No, shh, shh, shh. It's not your fault." Autumn stopped sobbing, stopped breathing, and stared at Claire as they both heard the familiar tip-tapping of fingers on the speech assistant's device, repeating, "Sorry. Sorry. Sorry." The device lay atop the dresser near the door.